Well, back in September, we talked to a Chinese virologist who had fled here to the United States. Her name is Dr. Li Menyan. She's published papers on coronavirus transmission in some of the best scientific journals in the world. And here's part of what she told us.
From my first report, I can present the solid scientific evidence to our audience that this virus, COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, actually is not from nature. I work with the top coronavirologists in the world. So together with my experience, I can tell you, this is created in the lab. This is from that template owned by China military. And also it is spread to the world to make such damage.
To make such damage, do you believe the Chinese government released this intentionally, on purpose? Did they do this?
Yes, of course, it's intentionally.
Coronavirus is not from nature, she said. It was created in a lab, and it was intentionally spread to the world. Now, we don't have the expertise to judge the accuracy of those claims. We know the person who made them has a background in relevant science. We know that she's credible to that extent. We also know that no one in the media has bothered to look into what she said. Facebook will try and censor you for trying. Today, the New York Times published a piece entitled "How Steve Bannon and a Chinese Billionaire Created a Right-Wing Coronavirus Media Sensation," purely flacking for the Chinese government. If you want to know how rotten and corrupt the New York Times has become, which was like a legitimate paper not that long ago, read this piece. They called Dr. Yang a liar. They didn't say how she was lying, just that she was lying. Sound familiar? Back in April, he did exactly the same thing to Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Here's what he noticed at the time.
Here's what we do know. This virus did not originate in the Wuhan animal market. Just a few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that researches human infectious diseases. Now, we don't have evidence that this disease originated there, but because of China's duplicity and dishonesty from the beginning, we need to at least ask the question.
Yeah, so he was immediately attacked as a kook. Actually, since we've learned he was probably right, the U.S. government has confirmed there's evidence showing the virus did come from a Chinese infectious disease lab, not the wet market down the street. But here's how the media treated Tom Cotton's assertion, his question, really, at the time.
Tom Cotton, a couple of days ago, spouting a conspiracy theory that the Chinese made this virus up. Don't try to spool up some of whoever was wearing tinfoil hats in your audience.
Let's apply Occam's razor and just call crazy. This is crazy. This is an insane thing to do. It's just wildly irresponsible and was totally unnecessary. I don't know what Tom Cotton gets out of this.
In the 1980s, I remember when the far left trafficked in rumors about HIV having been invented in CIA labs. The far right has now found its own virus conspiracy theory.
Oh, the far right and its virus conspiracy theories. They're saying the same thing now. By the way, they're not even attempting to address the substance of the questions. They allied right over it. It's a real question. This is a legitimate story, and the answer matters for scientific reasons, not just for political reasons. Alex Berenson is a journalist who used to work at the New York Times. He's covered COVID as closely as anybody, more than almost anybody. And anyone, we'll just say it. Alex Berenson, thanks for joining us. Why does this question matter? The origin of the coronavirus, why should we care about that? And what do we know?
Well, we should care because, well, look, here's the thing. I don't think there's evidence that this was man-made from the ground up. I don't think anybody's proven that. And I know,
right.
You know, when Dr. Lee said that to you, you were sort of taken aback. Tom Cotton's position makes much, much more sense. And it's actually more important, okay? Because there's something called gain-of-function research, which is essentially an effort to make viruses more dangerous. This is not a conspiracy theory. This happens. The idea is that there's a ton of viruses out there in the world. There's coronavirus, there's influenza, there's other kinds of viruses, and we want to know which of those viruses are most likely to cause an epidemic. And some scientists believe that the best way to do that is to actually make them more dangerous, more likely to leap, between animal species and humans in labs. The problem with that is that there's been a number of accidents in labs, and there's a risk whenever you do this that you're going to create a really terrible virus and it's going to leak. Okay, we don't know if that happened with the coronavirus with SARS-CoV-2. What we do know is that When the original SARS came out, when the original SARS emerged in 2003, in a matter of months, we knew what the animal host was, and we knew what the closely related animal virus in that host was. We are now a year into this, and we have no idea what the animal, we have a theory, but we have no proof that the animal host was a bat. We have no proof where it came from. And we know this virus looks pretty odd. It's mostly very closely related to a bat virus that we know the Wuhan lab had, and there's a bit of a pangolin virus in there. We don't know how those mixed. They could have mixed naturally. They could have mixed through gain-of-function research. There's no evidence either way. The problem is, Tucker, that aside from you, no one else in the media wants to talk about this. We're all pretending that we've proven, that the Chinese have somehow proven this is natural, and we shouldn't talk about it anymore. And given the risks here, and given that this research is still going on, it is insane that we are not pushing this.
Your explanation, I mean, what do I know? But it sounds to me like the most plausible one, that this was the subject of research. This lab had been singled out by American authorities as kind of reckless in the way it handled viruses.
Reckless,
right,
yes.
Dangerous,
That's
exactly. Right. And it escaped, and the Chinese were embarrassed to try to hide it, shut down, it didn't work. Why wouldn't?
Yes, by the way, the Chinese are now trying to blame the Italians for this. So the Chinese today decided to try to blame the Italians for this. The reason for that is, and here's another mystery that no one is talking about, there's some very serious research that came out of Italy about 10 days ago. An Italian cancer lab looked at serology, looked at blood samples from 2019, the fall of 2019, and they found a lot of SARS-CoV-2 antibodies in those blood samples, all the way back to September of 2019. We don't understand that either, and we don't understand, it's possible they made a mistake, although the researchers are very serious, and it's not clear how they would have made a mistake. The Chinese are now using that to blame the Italians and say, oh, there might be evidence that this came out of Italy. Well, okay, that's probably a total smokescreen, but guess what? That's another reason that this needs to be investigated internationally. It doesn't have to be a U.S. scientist that leads it. We need an international investigation here.
Because the research is still, gain-of-function research is still going on. So, right.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
Of course. Alex Berenson, thank you for persisting with the obvious questions. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tucker.